In the fall of 1971, commercial air travel operated on trust. There were no metal detectors, no mandatory luggage inspections, and no requirement to show a government ID. Passengers simply bought a ticket and walked straight to their gates. On the afternoon of November 24th, a man approached the Northwest Orient Airlines counter at Portland International Airport. He handed over a $20 bill to purchase a one-way ticket for Flight 305 to Seattle, giving his name as Dan Cooper. He blended perfectly with the afternoon crowd. Witnesses described a man in his mid-40s wearing a dark suit, white shirt, black tie, and dark sunglasses. Because the system required zero friction or verification, a man with a false name and untraceable background was able to walk onto a commercial Boeing 727 carrying a briefcase full of explosives. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper settled into seat 18E in the last row of the cabin. He ordered a bourbon and 7-Up, lit a Raleigh cigarette, and handed a handwritten note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. Assuming it was just a passenger's phone number, Schaffner dropped the note unread into her purse. Cooper leaned forward and whispered a correction. She needed to look at the paper because he had a bomb. When she asked to see it, he unlatched his attaché case. Inside sat a heavy battery wired to 8 red cylinders. Through a polite, quiet conversation, the routine 30-minute flight instantly became a high-altitude hostage situation, isolating the 36 passengers and crew miles above the Pacific Northwest. Cooper relayed a highly specific set of demands to the cockpit. He wanted $200,000 in negotiable $20 bills, and he required 4 parachutes to be waiting for him upon landing. The demand for exactly 4 parachutes was a calculated psychological tactic. By requesting multiple rigs, he forced the FBI to assume he intended to jump with hostages. This guaranteed the authorities would not provide sabotaged or dummy equipment. Flight 305 landed in Seattle. Directed to an isolated stretch of tarmac, Cooper allowed the 36 passengers to disembark into the night. In exchange, a heavy canvas bag of cash and the parachutes were brought aboard. By the time the engines throttled back up, he had secured his capital, his escape gear, and an empty cabin, all without shedding a single drop of blood. Cooper ordered the remaining crew to take off toward Reno, Nevada, under strict parameters. They were to stay at an altitude of 10,000 feet, leave the cabin unpressurized. These specific aerodynamic drag conditions forced the jet to fly at a slow crawl of roughly 115 miles per hour. The 15-degree flap extension prevents the aircraft from stalling at speeds that would cause a normal commercial flight to plummet. He also utilized a highly guarded mechanical feature of the 727. Its aft air stair could be lowered mid-flight, allowing a person to step out safely under the engine exhaust. The pilots up front had no physical override to lock the door. Alone in the rear of the cabin, Cooper locked the crew in the cockpit. At 8:13 p.m., the pilots felt a sudden change in cabin pressure, and the tail section pitched upward. A man walked down the metal stairs and jumped into a freezing Washington rainstorm. Using the jet's own engineering specifications against it, he turned a commercial airliner into a massive jump plane and stepped entirely off the grid. In the days that followed, the military and the FBI conducted massive sweeps through the rugged forests of southwest Washington. Despite aircraft flyovers and troops on the ground, the search yielded nothing. The only physical trace recovered from the plane was sitting on seat 18E, his black clip-on tie. Decades later, electron microscopes would detect microscopic particles of unalloyed titanium and bismuth on the fabric, heavily pointing to an occupation in aerospace or chemical manufacturing. The trail remained dead until February 1980, when an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was raking the sandy banks of the Columbia River to build a campfire. He uncovered 3 decomposing packets of $20 bills buried in the wet sand, totaling $5,800. FBI technicians processed the notes and confirmed they were an exact match to the recorded serial numbers of the ransom cash. The presence of industrial particles and rotting currency confirmed a successful descent, but provided no path toward the man himself. Following a string of copycat attempts, the aviation industry forced an immediate physical modification on all Boeing 727s. They mandated the installation of the Cooper vane, a mechanical exterior lock that completely prevented the aft stairs from opening during flight. Policy changes followed the hardware updates. By 1973, the FAA implemented universal luggage searches and installed metal detectors at all commercial airports in the U.S. While hijackings were frequent in the early 70s, the escape from Flight 305 forced a transition. By 1973, the casual freedom of the boarding gate was replaced by the permanent scrutiny of the security terminal. The FBI maintained an exhaustive manhunt for 45 years. Agents investigated hundreds of suspects, from disgruntled aviation technicians to ex-military paratroopers and serial hijackers. Every lead ultimately fractured into dead ends. Citing degraded evidence and a lack of actionable suspects, the Bureau officially suspended the active Norjack investigation in 2016. Investigators remain split between two stark conclusions. He either succumbed to the freezing rain and died on impact in the Washington mud, or he pulled off a private heist and walked away a wealthy man. Dan Cooper exploited the blind spots of a trusting era. He remains the only person to step off a commercial jet and vanish into the night, taking his identity into the void forever.